First of all, I got here a little bit late and then sweating profusely, cycled from Acton. Thanks to everyone for making it. Thank you very much for the panel for coming. I'm Martin from Cooking Vinyl. We started off these panels looking at really issues that really affected how record labels earned money and how you monetize recorded music. And they were really good. And then this series, we decided to look at the bigger picture. And the last one was on the future of music in London, which I had no idea what it was going to be about. And I thought it was fascinating. It was great. A lot of these panels you go to and you kind of know, you've heard a lot of it. Whereas that one was totally new ground for me and I think most of the audience. And we had fantastic panelists on that. This one is on something really, really important that in a way I don't think gets discussed enough either at these things, and it's the future of management, a fundamental part of the industry, a very important question. We've got an amazing panel, and I'm very eager, thanks a lot for coming, to hear what you've all got to say.
Cheers, Martin.
To Tim.
Cheers.
Hello everybody, for those that don't know me, my name is Tim Ingham. I work for Music Business Worldwide, and thanks to Cooking Vinyl for putting these on. As Martin says, the whole point is to gaze into the future, so even though we will inevitably get bogged down in modern day topics, arguments and ruses, maybe one or two brands in particular. Before we get there though, I like it if the panel could introduce themselves. You probably know them. We'll start with Tim at the end and work our way through, and to perhaps quicken things up slightly, if you can mention who you are, where you work, and what the current thing that you're working on is.
Oh God. Tim Clark. I'm chairman of IE Music, and we manage Robbie Williams, Passenger, Lily Allen, among lots of others. And we're currently working on that most brilliant of singles, Party Like a Russian.
Mr. Webster.
Hi, I'm John Webster. I'm the president of the Music Managers Forum. I've been a retailer, a label person, a manager, and I've been running the MMF until Annabella here took over from me at the beginning of this year. My most important thing at the moment is this, which has got a plug in straight away, which is our Dissecting the Digital Dollar report, which is about streaming and how the money flows. It's free on the website. Thank you.
What's the URL?
www.themmf.net/digital dollar.
There you go. That's it.
Down.
Rob.
Rob Collins from Cooking Vinyl. I'm the A&R and Marketing Director. I've been at Cooking Vinyl for 17 years, believe it or not. Before that, I had stints as a manager, stints as a tour manager, worked at independent labels, and also met John when I was a postboy at Virgin Records in 1980, I think. Just showing our age here. Current projects, we're very excited to be working with Tim and his team on the Passenger record, which was the #1 record. We've got the Feeder record currently out at the moment, and we're in the process of actually setting up quite a lot of our releases for March and April next year. That's keeping a lot of the company busy as well.
It's a slightly unfair question on Lamar. I tried to pre-warn you, but who are you? And what are you working on currently?
My name's Lamar. I sing. And that's what I'm working on at the moment. I've got another album. It's nearly finished. We're going to bring it out next year. So I'm working on that, amongst other things. And
in the theme of the panel, could you let the audience know where your artist management partners reside?
Where
who is your manager?
IE Music, Tim, and a number of people in the room. Lucy's over there, yeah.
So we'll get a little dual perspective on topics, hopefully all in harmonious agreement, we shall see. Martha.
Hi, I'm Martha Kin. I manage Years and Years, and I'm a partner at Machine Management, and we manage a range of acts, Clean Bandit through to rapper Reggie Snow, producer Mark Ralph, and other acts. Yeah, not as exciting as Lamar.
It's pretty exciting. And finally, David.
David Manders. I run a management company called Liquid Management. Been in the industry survived in the industry for about 25 years, and somehow survived the management probably for about 17 actually. My current projects, public service broadcasting, just coming to the end of last album, setting up their next album, so going into 2017, 2018. A couple of new artists, Animal Noise and Tara Priya, and a baby band, Speakman Sound, who we're just setting up at the moment. And another band called Flaming Gods, who you may have heard of, been played quite a bit on Six Music over the summer.
I'm going to open with a question that I'm not going to commit to whatsoever, because it's purely an excuse to get Tim a round of applause. Did you mention Tim just said he had a #1 record with Passenger with Cooking Vinyl? Can we have a round of applause for that, please?
They don't happen often.
And can I say that that's one of the reasons why I'm here?
So if that was an excuse for some celebration, then it does bring up an interesting topic on albums themselves. I'm not going to get too far down into that, but Tim, how much do you judge your artists on albums, and particularly the album chart in 2016 compared to years that have gone by?
How about disastrous? I think. I guess disastrous, really. Sales have dropped significantly. But I've always been an optimist, and I figure that, and digital technology, let's face it, has been, if you like, the culprit for this. But I really am an optimist, and I think what digital technology has taken away, with some common sense, digital will put back. So sales have dropped significantly, and I think if you're a touring artist, you're a lucky artist.
John, does it perplex you sometimes how much emphasis? I mean, it's of course important and fair that we should celebrate an independent success like Passenger, especially against the behemoth that is Mr. Springsteen. But does it puzzle you a little that labels concentrate so much on the album and the chart to this day, when managers, from my mind, seem to have a more holistic view of the industry?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that I wrote down, as soon as you mentioned that, which has been occurring probably since In Rainbows came out, is how do you measure success? And you measure success in so many different ways these days. Albert, I don't look at the charts anymore. I mean, I haven't looked at them. It's not what I do, I suppose, in working at a trade association. But when we've got our award show coming up, and you're looking at lots of people who are up for breakthrough awards and things like that, and they've all done different things. I mean, it's funny. I've just been to America last week presenting this, and I met this guy who managed 9 acts, and he said, we were talking about money, and I said, but you probably make money live, and he said, none of my acts play live. I was like, whoa, what do they do? And he said, well, they like electro-pop acts, and we do fashion types, and we do branding, and we do this, and we do that, and we do streaming, and we just don't play live. Why would we bother? I found that really interesting. But he was doing really well. So how you measure things is a big issue, I think, these days.
With that in mind, Rob, as the label representative, I feel a bit sorry for Rob on these things, because if the sort of label has to have an aura of take it on the chin, I have an aura of malevolence around it. But how do you measure a very artist-friendly label? Of course, Cooking Vinyl, a lot of profit split deals, a lot of artist services deals. How do you measure success?
Success for us, or success for
success for you?
Success for us is being able to pay the wages each month. It's really, really tough out there. Streaming, I think, has opened up many, many opportunities, and in 2, 3, 4 years' time, it's going to fill the hole that's been left by the lack of CD sales. But we're not involved in the rest of the income streams. We're only involved in the music, in the CD, in the vinyl, in the digital. So yeah, we do still measure some success on chart positions, because you can shout about a chart position internationally. You can shout about it to media, people at Spotify. Everyone takes notice of the chart position. So even though the sales have just, crashed, you can only do what the market's letting you do. So if you do 20,000 records, and that's what the market will let you do, and it gets you to #1, then that's a big success. Yeah. But we also measure success by whether the artist is happy whether the management company are happy, whether we've got a long-term career with the artist as well. It's not all about the one record. So for us, it's about trying to grow a long-term relationship with the artist, and I think that's the biggest success that we take out of it.
Lamar, I was going to ask what makes you happy, but that's a very wide-ranging and philosophical question, so I'll try and narrow it down.
Well,
you came to prominence, I suppose, at a time when the music industry still wasn't in a terrible shape. There was quite a lot of money, especially at that end of the market that you were at back then. Your sort of credibility and talent has kept you an audience throughout your career, but obviously you, with every other artist, has seen that money drain away from the industry. How do you judge success now from your perspective? How do you, when you look at your management, I mean literally or figuratively, and also your label, how do you think, okay, I think people are doing a good job for me now? What is it that you look for?
I think from an artist's perspective, you just want support. You know, and support is a small word, but it's got a very broad meaning across the stages of an artist's career. You've got your period where you're trying to be known. You've got your period where you're hopefully having some success, and you've got a period that comes after that where you go through quite a few transitions and quite a few questions are being asked. And I think if you can be supported throughout all of those stages, that's, that for an artist anyway, that's what brings about success. That's what brings about confidence, and confidence is what brings about new material, which is good. Yeah. I understand the difference in focus between a manager and a label. A label needs to sell records. It's a business, So, but from a manager's perspective, I think a manager's job is extremely hard. I've been an artist, I've been a manager, stroke artist, and thankfully gone back to just being an artist and having management again.
And run a label, I believe.
And run a label, and it's extremely hard. I think if you're a manager, yes, you have to. If you're managing a Coke can doesn't speak back. It doesn't have emotions. It doesn't have feelings. You put it there, people buy it. It's red. It's Coke. With an artist, we might not feel happy one day. We might have gone out the night before, got dry. I mean, whatever. So, a manager has to juggle all those things and find the balance while telling a label everything is okay and everything's fine. So, that's why they have to take a holistic approach to everything, because their investment isn't just in the talent. The talent comes with so many other aspects to it. So. Yeah.
They have to be the closest to you in the moments of success and the moments of otherwise, I imagine. Yeah. Martha, it's important to point out that you look after Years and Years, who are a genuine UK breakthrough, and the last year particularly, obviously. But as we look around, and the UK isn't alone in this, in thinking how do we bring through sustained album acts in the modern era. What was it from a management perspective that you and Machine brought to Years and Years that helped push their career to that point?
I think the thing with them was I think we did a lot of development behind the scenes. Like, it might have appeared to some people that it happened quite quickly, but that definitely wasn't the case. Like, even before I was managing them, they were in a different thing, like they were out gigging, and they'd sort of made a lot of mistakes behind the scenes, and we helped them and we put them with some really good people, and just kind of got them to a place where they really sort of knew what they were, and we kind of got to a bit of like an all or nothing moment where we like put everything behind it, and it was all through like favours and like everything that we'd done ourselves, because we'd been doing it for such a long time. And at that point, we were in a really strong position because, we knew all the people that we wanted to work with. We had this amazing vision, and then, the majors really came to us. And sort of since then, we've been able to keep that control, and it's, really just been a really good process since then. And
we'll come on to managers doing more and more, and the signing stage of a label, when it's wise to sign to different types of labels. Yeah. But one thing I'm really interested in is, obviously, you look after producer Mark Ralph.
Yeah.
who I think produced the majority of that album, if not all of it.
That's right.
And so ultimately, was that a management company helping make a really important A&R decision?
Well, exactly. It's almost like we were the label really at the start. Like we really got it to a place where the A&R was basically, well, it wasn't done, but there was, we had the template for what the A&R was at that point. So yeah, definitely. Like we utilised the resources at Machine to get it there.
And you, this is genuine. Before we spoke, you were saying how happy you were with what Polydor have brought to the table since that point.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how they help push it, not only from obviously the marketing promotion side, but also from the A&R side. How did the label help once you'd got to that, let's say 90% done, whatever it was? How did they help?
I think just like you said, the word is support, really, just in every sense of the word. Like they really supported what the band's vision was, like our collective vision, and even when it was controversial at times, it might not be the right thing to be super mainstream and sell records. Like that is who, Ollie, especially as like a very sort of open, like LGBT positive frontman, like we did a lot of stuff, and the label really supported us on that, and like we have such mutual respect for that, and just throughout the journey they have really supported what we've wanted to do, and they've always brought ideas to the table, like marketing, A&R, and yeah, they have been really good. Like I know majors get a lot of criticism, but I guess it's easy for me to say that because they were a priority act pretty early on, and they've continued to be that. So that's not always the case.
But arguably, perhaps they wouldn't have been a priority act had they signed at the wrong stage.
Well, exactly.
Of their career, so.
That's exactly right.
David, that's interesting. Martha's talking about developing an act to a certain stage of their career and then sort of having a conversation with the label. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you developed an act to a certain stage of their career and then basically became a label.
That's correct, yeah. Through necessity, really. I mean, we were doing similar things at the beginning, though, to Martha, really. We were just recording records, putting the act out on the road, doing shows, doing the development side of things. And part of that then becomes putting out a single, putting a team together, finding a radio plugger and a press person to work with you as part of that team. And before we knew it, we had a record called Spitfire that was getting, a playlist at Six Music.
This is public service broadcasting.
Public service broadcasting, yeah. And we were starting to sell good numbers of records. And so we were like, right, we need to put out a little mini album now, which is called The War Room. We released that, and there was a huge demand on their vinyl. I think we pressed up like 1,000, which we were initially doing through Bandcamp, working with Believe, doing our digital distribution. We sold out that 1,000 within a matter of a few weeks, actually, very quickly. And then it was like, maybe we need to get, we need to take this up a level now, and we actually need to make some CDs as well, because CDs do still sell. There are people out there buying them. So, it's just sort of roller coasted and developed as we've gone along. That's not been because we weren't looking for a label. Because we were early on, it's just where the journey's taken us.
And I imagine this will become a sort of defining theme. Everyone could have predicted it before we sat down, but ultimately management companies taking more and more on, and then at what point do you thematically become a label if you are, I'm not going to pick on you, but if you are like finding a producer who you trust and they click with the act, like that's a very, traditionally that would be a label operation. I'll start with you, David, because you're the obvious candidate to ask the question. Do we need labels? Will we need labels in 10 years?
We definitely need labels, yeah. I mean, we've just become a label on the one act, so we're still a label. We just happen to be the ones doing that job at the present time. No, we definitely need labels. This is just I think that's the thing about the future of management, is there's so many different routes to take. There's lots of options out there for you. You need those skills. We don't do this on our own. I have another manager that works on public service broadcasting with me, Stephen Dix, and we employ lots of very skilled, brilliant, independent, promotional people, press, radio, all sorts of areas, here and internationally, to help us with that. We need labels. We need labels to do a little bit more investment at times, because the onus is on the management, I think, early on. Yeah, this could be a very long conversation.
Well, let's
Go
keep
on.
it going. Tim, I'm very aware that we're at a crucial juncture in Robbie's promotion, so I'm not going to trip you up. But I definitely
You
do.
can certainly try.
I definitely. There's a challenge. I wanted to ask, why did you sign to Sony? So that's a big deal. Robbie was previously signed to Island, and I know that you had a very artist-friendly deal there. What was it that drew you to Sony? It's a different way to put it. But also, what do you need from a label? When you've got an artist of that calibre and that popularity, what do you need from a label?
We need services, and our agreement with Sony is a services deal. It's a distribution deal, and they supply services. They don't supply finance, as it happens, because Mr. Williams fortunately doesn't need finance, and so he makes his own records and he makes his own videos and he owns it all. And you know, if you have the ability to do that, or rather the resources to do that, then you should. And we're great believers in artists owning their own rights. We've tried to do it ever since we set up IE Music. That's David, my partner, ex-partner, lately deceased partner, and myself. We set out really to make sure that artists own their own rights, and we've achieved that in fairly large measure. But with Robbie, of course, it's easy because he can afford it, and it's very sensible for him to do it, because just as record companies value themselves by the copyrights they own, well, goes to say that that's what artists do. So I think labels aren't necessary, but it depends what sort of label, and it depends what sort of deal. And there are good deals, thank you. There are ordinary deals, and there are heinous deals. And the heinous deals are the ones to be avoided, obviously.
Can we elaborate any more on what the hallmarks are of a heinous deal in 2016?
Well, I mean, a heinous deal obviously is anything, I would say, over 4 albums and length of copyright, and that take lots and lots of other bits and pieces of an artist's earnings without actually giving anything back on the recording income. That's what I would say is the mark of a heinous deal.
John, you gesticulated positively when Tim mentioned the ownership, artists owning their own copyrights. That's a lovely utopian ideal for a management panel to sit and talk about. Some artists are able to use that leverage with their management companies to take hold of their and control of their career in that way. But is it a reality? Is it ever going to become almost unanimous for artists that they own their own copyrights, do you think?
I hope so. I mean, it's definitely moving in that direction, and the issue is money. It's what we've been trying to do with the MMF for the past, 7 years, is really to try and decouple copyright ownership with monetary investment. And to do that, you have to come up with different sources of investment. We're seeing it through, some of the quasi-government schemes with the PRS Foundation and the MEGS thing and things like that. We're beginning to see that. And, there are other sources of investment. There are angel investors, and it's just a question of coming up with a suitable deal for them as well. So I think it's happening. It's certainly beginning to happen. And then, of course, if you like Tim and Robbie, if you've got that position where you can make a record and you don't need the managed investment, you can do a very different deal. And that's, I think, is where we're going. And I think labels are resisting it still, but I think they are coming around to the idea of what is effectively a better partnership.
And is a better partnership because the artist is more motivated?
I don't think that's strictly true, because we are still seeing a lot of what we like to say we do at the MMF is education, and it's still pointing out to people you can do things differently. There are definitely people. One artist in particular comes to mind that has been through, I think, every major label and come back the other end and gone back to the one where they were in the first place. And that artist obviously wants what they perceive as the security of working with someone on that basis. Other people have different views. And I think it's a question of pointing out to people that you can have success without trading your copyrights away.
Lamar, your own copyrights. What journey have you been on your career in terms of where they are, what you regret, and decisions that you're happy that you made?
Do you know, honestly, I don't regret any decision I've made. You know, I think life is a learning curve. So you make a decision, you roll the dice, you go with it, and if it's good, and if it's bad, you learn. You know, I wouldn't say anything's been really bad. I was with Sony for 8 years, I think it was, 5 years, 5 albums anyway. So that copyright's there, and then after that, I self-released with 1 album, so copyright's over here. And we've done that again, a license, and we're making another one. I think if you can make, especially nowadays where making an album is much cheaper, you don't need a huge studio. If you've got a Mac and the ability to write a song and a few friends with some instruments, you can do, you can make something. So I think as that becomes cheaper, it's more realistic for an artist to say, all right, here's the end product. So, I want to license it, but I think where you don't have that, then you need input, you need finance, and you're at the mercy of the deal that's being offered to you. So, yeah.
Martha, on this idea of future copyright ownership, not talking about any current artists, but through your experiences, do you think there'll ever come a day where you do a major label deal for an emerging artist and you say, no, sorry, the long-term copyrights are off the table, they're staying with the artist?
I mean, I think it's a different conversation if it's a new artist than an established artist, because you have so much more power as an established artist. And, I don't think we're today at a time where for a new artist, really, it's simple to just sort of own your own copyright and still get the investment and the expertise that you need. That's still really tricky. It's not impossible, and I think it's definitely moving in the right way. There's companies like Cobalt offering really interesting deals for artists, and it's definitely...
And
cooking vinyl, of course. Sorry, I've been working with Cobalt lately.
It's almost as if they did it before.
So I think it's moving that way. But
just from a major perspective, if the band's the hottest band in town, you've got a lot more bargaining power, even if they haven't sold 1 record.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can start saying, demanding this, this and this, and the deal can be done. But you're right, they're not that many around.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah. I just still think that I feel like it has to happen with not just a few artists. It would need to be a lot of artists to kind of have that kind of power. And maybe that will happen more now that artists have more power with streaming, and like they can come with saying like, hey, I'm already guaranteed this much income behind me, so, I want to keep these rights. So yeah, I think potentially the deals can get a lot better.
Yeah. What would that mean for labels, Rob?
Well, we don't get streaming.
That's not what I meant.
If we live in for what John and Tim potentially is a utopian world, where artists own 100% of their own copyrights.
Well, it's fine for us because that's where we live at the moment.
With the majority of artists,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. I mean, we work with a lot of fan-based type artists. They have the ability to make their own records. We're not afraid to invest either. If the money is safe, we're happy to put the money on the table to make a record.
I suppose that's where I'm getting to is economically, if they're holding on to their copyrights, you can make that work as a business. I mean, the majors may, if this is the future, have to go through that transition. You seem to be some way of the way there already.
I think you earn the majority of the money in the first 3-4 years of the record anyway, unless it's a Led Zeppelin record or something that really connects with with society. After 4 or 5 years, generally it becomes a very quiet piece of catalogue anyway. You might get the odd sync, but we would have earned our share of the income and paid through to the artist as well, and hopefully recoup the deal in that amount of time as well. The thing we try to do is actually recoup the deals for the artists and pay through royalties. That fosters such a fantastic relationship. And you find they come back and want to make another record with you.
Did you feel good recouping?
Yeah, you know,
Did it matter? Like you got you know, I'm assuming here, but you got your check in the first place. But you know, when you got the call saying it's all paid off, thanks, Lauren, let's do it again.
Yeah, do you know? I think my experience was when I was with Sony. I feel when a label is all cylinders working properly and it's working, in my experience, it's unbeatable. You know, everyone on the same page, moving full force forward, investing where they need to invest, supporting how they need to support. It's great, you know. But there's nothing in life that's just always, you know, everything has peaks and troughs. And for me, just like with management, if everything's going great, that's the easier time. You know, it's the before and the after. That's the hard bit, you know. But I think in the good bit, that's the business bit. So business decisions are made. And if everything's going all right, then, you know, it kind of is what it is, you know. I was always motivated during that time because everything's positive, you know. So you're motivated. It's, you know, as things move on and it gets a bit political, but yeah.
And what are you looking for from management at that point? At the downturn when you're on that sort of a deal, what are you looking for your manager to sort?
You know, across the board, always support. That is it. You know, I have a good understanding of business, I feel, you know, so I just think support at all stages, support, no smoke and mirrors, no, you know, pats on the back, just support. And then I think you'll always have a good artist. You'll always have an artist that is, you know, willing. You don't need chauffeur-driven cars. I think most artists, especially long-term artists anyway, they came in for the right reason. They want to make good music. They feel they have a talent. They want to connect with people. You know, and whether you're in a Ford or a mansion, that's the secondary part. You know, so I think at all times it's just support. That's what an artist needs: support. Yeah.
Martha, I'm aware of getting stuck on a narrative that is when we talk about years and years, which is management companies there. Where a label would have invested earlier and years before they weren't there. You did a lot of the A&R, you invested a lot yourselves, you did a lot of work yourselves, and then somehow they got handed over to the major and the major took over. So I suppose what I'm interested to delve into is, are you finding yourselves doing more and more work or less work than you were in those early years? And what do the label bring to the table at this stage, and what do you bring to the table?
You mean with that specific act?
That specific act. Well, once you've got to the point that they've broken, you see that this is, I think, sometimes a lazy assumption I've possibly made at times. That is, the management did all of the work in the early times, but then the label took over and it really started rolling.
No, it doesn't lighten your workload at all. No. But of course, you know, if things are going well, then you're busy, so you can't really complain. Like, you're busy for that reason, and, you know, of course, you're still doing a lot, but you have the support of the whole team there, and, you know, you just feel good to be a part of that. If the relationship is good and it is going well. Sorry, what was
no, it's really that you'll find yourself doing more work, even though the label was taking a stronger influence in the career.
I mean, yeah, I think you're always doing a lot of work. Like, you've always got to stay ahead, don't you? Like, you're the one that's proactive. You're the one leading everything, like, with the acts. Like, you never want the label to be telling you the way it should be. Like, you're the one doing that, and then the label are the one that's behind you, supporting you, and that's how it should work. And that's a healthy dynamic to have.
So the label is behind you as opposed to you being behind the label. That's
exactly. I think you're in a bad position if the label are the ones sort of calling the shots and coming to you all the time. Like, it should be you going to them. Like, you should be there, like, in their offices, you know, sort of, you know, coming up with the plans, like, marketing for every single area. So you just sort of creates more work, but it's just more shared between all of you.
Yeah. David, I'm gonna use your experience to shoehorn in the topic du jour. Are digital services providing, be they exclusive deals or other types of deals, where a check is passed from digital service direct to management company or digital service direct to artists, is that a direct threat as it stands today to the current label structure?
You're talking about exclusives, are you?
Apple would be the obvious one, not just exclusives, but that would be the obvious way that this is happening.
I think it's a very bad thing. Because I think the problem is nobody's thinking about the fan here and the person that has to go out and pay for their subscription to a streaming service or, you know, a digital service. I just think it's negating the fan, and I think they've always got to stay number one priority in any artist or management or labels thinking. Otherwise they'll go away. You know, we've just taken away from places, you know, some of the, downloading for free, pirate sites and things. We're slowly drawing them away from that, and streaming has been a huge help with that. If we start segregating and expecting the fans out there to the consumer to have 5 or 6 different digital, sites that they have to go to get the music they want, I think we'll start losing them again.
To offer the question a slightly different angle, Tim, if you had an artist like Robbie Williams, not Robbie Williams, an artist like Robbie Williams, could you see one day you signing an artist like that to a direct deal with a digital, like an Apple or an Amazon or whoever it may be, and actually not going down the label route?
That's an interesting question. I think it's for all the reasons that you just mentioned, Dave. It's the fan. I often say, and I think some of you might have heard me say, there's only really 2 things that are important in our industry. It's the artist and the fan, and everything else is just gloop in the middle. And we're all part of that gloop, as it were. It's artist and fan, and so if you start messing around with the fans, you will lose them. And so if it was a question of doing a deal with Apple because they've offered a shed load of money, well, the artist might take it, of course.
So long as you're involved in the decision, I should point that out.
But I think we would say no, because you're ignoring all those other fans that you might have, that the artist might have, that are signed up to Spotify. Why would you do that? Why would you ever do that? It's bonkers. Unless, of course, you think your career is short term and you better take the money.
Or you're Drake. Then it's fine. Then you can be the biggest artist on Spotify and Apple and everything.
There's always somebody who breaks the rules.
I don't really know what that check from Apple achieves, but there were, other than Drake.
That's not the template for the business going forward.
Unfortunately not. It's always going to be the minority at the top.
I'm just interested though, because we're talking about the amount of work that managers have to do. Actually, I really feel sorry for artists and the amount of work they now have to do. It is onerous. I mean, the amount of content that artists have to make. Yeah. And the thing is, fans know if it's not the artist. You can go and tweet, you can go and put up stuff on Facebook and all the rest of it. The fans will know if it's the manager or the record company or whatever. They'll know it immediately. I mean, they're savvy, these people, and so it falls on the artist to be making all of this stuff. Now, I have to say that when I started in this industry, and I'm sorry, I'm going to show my age, but in 1965, we just put little plastic things in paper bags with no picture on them at all, just little white bags, and shipped them out to the shops. Job done. Now look at what you have to do. It's bloody Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and God knows what else. I mean, Lamar.
I mean, I was going to say I can kind of hear Lamar audibly grumbling.
I'm grumbling. It is a lot. It's a lot. It is seriously a lot of stuff. You say I came to prominence at the turn of things. So initially I thought that was busy then, because there was much more TV, TV performances. But the TV performances are obviously, the TV slots are obviously less now, but the amount of continuous content is, for me anyway, I'm quite a private person. Yeah. So, if it's Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, it feels like they're on your phone now. Like they're here, they're in your pocket now. And you have to communicate because that's just where it's going, Yeah. So definitely as an artist, the switch off isn't when you come off stage now. I'm not sure there is a switch off. It's just, you know, really I should have it on now. Snapchat. Yeah, the music managers forum, you know, or whatever, you know. But yeah, it is definitely different in that way.
Selfishly, something I've often wondered is what would happen to like a Nick Drake in 2016, who's sort of introverted, if not reclusive, and being told we need at least 16 hours of content from you a week.
Well, I was just about to say to Mark, I mean, do you feel you have to do them all? Because there are artists, aren't there? And there are, the one that always comes to mind at the moment is Van Morrison, who doesn't do, as far as I'm aware, any of that stuff, or very little of it. Yeah. But you might argue that his career is not what it quite was for. And is it because of that?
Just doing it now,
I'm not sure. But there are people who just don't do it.
Yeah. No, do you know what? I feel...
I don't do that every day, so that was a bit weird for me.
I used to feel obligated to do a lot more. But it just, I feel... I've spoken with Tim and Lucy about this quite a bit. You know, you have to do what feels natural to you. Because if it feels forced, again, they know, you know. So I found that there's one or two that feel a bit more natural to me. I try and focus on those. Yeah. And sorry to the others, you know. Yeah.
And Tim, do you feel that you have to manage that? Like, do your best to manage it? Because that could eat up creative energy, certainly eat up time.
While you're trying to write an album, it definitely does. Yeah. it eats up time, but yeah, you have to prioritise.
But now that's part of the process with Pledge, isn't it?
Oh, exactly. That's a whole nother layer.
A whole nother layer of like artists taking power and making their records and opening up the process to the record and bearing their soul in the studio.
I think there's a thin line on that as well, though, because I find like I think with anything, with humans, we get bored of things, you know? So for me anyway, growing up, part of what was great about, I don't know, Michael Jackson or any other great was the fact that unless I got that VHS and I was awake at 1 o'clock in the morning to see the live thing, or when he came and I bought a ticket, unless I saw him at those points, I couldn't. I had to listen to the record and make it up in my mind. Yeah. Whereas now, you know, if you know everything behind everything, it becomes less special, I think. So, you know, if you show the behind the scenes of every single thing, you have to hold back little bits so that people know there is a little bit of something, you know, creative in what you do. Yeah.
There's a line.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
This is all about the work that artists and managers have to do. There was once a halcyon era where big checks were passed from labels to managers.
I never knew of that era.
I'm so sorry about that. Literally added zeros. There were added zeros. David, you mentioned before we came on that those days have not just gone. I mean, they've been ground into the dust.
Certainly when I started out, to some degree, you could go and pick up a bit of a buzz on the band just through rumour. Sell out the Falcon in Camden, or take an A&R guide, you know, to a couple of rehearsals and shop a deal in that way, and make a living off of signing deals without actually selling a record. You could do that to some degree. There was so much more money out there for development, so many more bands were getting signed, and you could go around doing that. These days, that's just not the case. You know, in the majority of cases, you probably have had some radio plays. You probably had to have some tastemaker press going on. You would have definitely have done a few more shows. You would have built a lot more of a story that was a little bit more public before you're going into deals. And even when you're signing deals, there isn't the same amount of money for development. Maybe ruling out major label deals here. You know, you going back to giving away rights for length of time. I think it's horses for courses, isn't it? It depends what you need for that artist and the nature of that artist, and it's all about taking them into the right deal that suits them, gives them what they need at that point in their career, and then making a business decision on how much you give away. Somebody is not going to give you £500,000 for one record for 3 years, you know, rights 3 years. Well, unless you're public service broadcasting and anybody else has got some offers out there. But
Where do I sign?
but
I'm guessing for the future of management, it might be the wrong crowd.
It just has to make sense for that. I mean, we don't necessarily need to do that. It's a more of a pop type thing. It is a little bit more of a boom or bust scenario. It needs to be very front loaded. You need to be getting into top 10s. You need to be having top 5, if not better albums, to make sense of life within those nature of deals. And it has to work internationally to a large degree. You're not going to... but bands can make a living off of selling 25,000 records in Europe, but a major label who's just invested £500,000 into a band is not going to be happy with you selling 25,000 records.
This is the future of management, but I'm going to dip back into the past because I can't get on this topic without speaking to Tim about the experience of one of the most famous record deals of all time, which is Robbie's EMI deal. I mean, how far in the past does that seem now with the reality of the modern business?
It's a long... was it 2002?
Yeah, I was going to say 4, around there.
Yeah, 2002. Well, things have changed dramatically since then. Well, I think, well, she would, wouldn't she? Got quite a good deal from Sony. But that's probably the last of them.
Yeah.
And lots of people said that Robbie's deal was the last of them. But honestly, I think one can get terribly gloomy. I was very lucky to work with Nick Drake, by the way. And we only sold, I think, about 3,000 of each of those albums. And it was, I think, something like 10 years after his death that people suddenly discovered Nick Drake. And it was because, I think initially it was because a big touring band was playing Nick just before they came on, or at some point in their show. And all of a sudden, this started to spread. And the only reason I'm saying this is that that was kind of a real hit and miss opportunity. With digital technology, you do have opportunities to get to your fan. Artists have way more opportunities to get to their fans than ever we had back in what seemed to be the glory days of the late 60s and through the 70s. I think that there's increasing streams of revenue from all sorts of different areas, and we need to explore those. And I think that's why artists do need to control as many of their rights as they possibly can, because these things are, these revenue streams are proliferating. You can really make money out of YouTube, dare I say it. Having attended a Sony thing last night where the devil was YouTube. Yeah. Well, of course, the devil is YouTube. We know that.
For them. I'm flying blind. I've definitely got 1 or 2 questions more I would like to ask. Can someone just indicate how much time we've got left for roughly?
15 minutes.
About 50 minutes. Okay, great. Cos, I'll go back to Martha, who I skipped there, and then go back this side of the panel to start off a whole other part of management. This is less the future of management and more the future of artistry, I suppose. On the balance sheet, we've gone through a period where artists would certainly earn many multiples from their touring than they would from their records. We've seen some famous examples of where the temptation to follow the money has actually ended careers. What's the right balance now, and what will the right balance be in years to come?
It's definitely different for every artist, so it's hard to give a template. Sorry, ask the question again. So
your artists will, even today, and certainly after the whole Napster era, there was obviously a huge discussion around this then, but they're guaranteed a paycheck.
Yeah.
If they announce a huge tour, they've got certain elements like Live Nation, not to pick on them, that's their business, encouraging them to do so.
Yeah.
But famously, it can wear act out, it can sort of dissolve the quality of their records. What is the right balance now in terms of getting a good income, taking advantage of your fame, but also creating the sort of music that will sustain your career?
Definitely, you've got to have a long-term strategy as a manager. Like, you definitely can't be looking for the big checks when you're building on your first album. You shouldn't be taking a big advance, for example. Like, that I just don't really understand why anyone would do that with your label. But yeah, I mean, the live industry is still really great and you can still make a lot of money there, and like you do need to find the balance between that and actually writing the music and things like that. Yeah, I don't know. It's different. It's different for every artist, really. But yeah.
And David, just on that point, because you see all sides, you are a label and a management company, you see all income streams. What is the right balance for an act like the public service broadcasting at this stage?
Well, the recordings are essential because without them, there is no business, really. So the recording side is essential, and I still think there's money in selling records. I just think you have to gauge it correctly and understand the amount of records your artist is going to be doing, and set your business up in that way to make sense of it. You know, people like Drake that their majority is streaming, but they're still, even without the iTunes money, they're still, I'm sure, making a large amount of money from streaming of music. But it's in a different area. In the area that I'm working in, public service broadcasting, we do extremely well on vinyl. We sell a lot of vinyl records, and I love the streaming side of things. I think it's a real great place for discovery and everyday play. But I think it's finding those real true fans that then want the vinyl. You know, they want to identify with that band. They want that record on their shelf so their friends see that record. In the same way as you have a book. You know, people do have books still as well. People growing up, they like to identify with things. It says a lot about them as a character and a person they are. So people buy into more than just the music. They want to be part of that gang. They want to be part of what's going on with that band. So we have a very good record business. We've gauged it right by doing it ourselves to a degree. But there are lots of record deals we could go and do at this point that would also make sense to us. And we would earn money from records. But it's about the 360 part of the business, which, strangely enough, is going back to the deal Robbie did. That was a 360 deal. That was a record company understanding that the future of the music business wasn't just in records. It was in a lot of other areas. And you, as a manager now, you have to have a great grasp of that and understand how to balance your business through all areas. And then if you want to do a tour, that your production is out the window, which public service broadcasting have most definitely done. But it's been one of the main reasons that we've built a really strong live following, built our touring business. And we've been able to take money from the record side, where we've been doing well, and not have to force the touring business to make so much money so everybody could live, so everybody could devote their time. So it's understanding your business and learning how to move money around between the various areas of it when needed to further the business as a whole.
I flippantly said a few minutes ago that I don't know what the Drake did for Apple, but the weird thing about that is it did a lot for Apple, but it didn't matter for Spotify. It's sort of two streaming services who are becoming crazily popular off the back of one or two or three artists. We know that streaming is going to work for the blockbuster level of the music industry in future. It's happening now. The question for the panel, I'm just going to ask a couple of people because we need to take some questions from the audience. Questions for the panel on that is streaming going to empower all types of artists and all types of management in future? And if it is, then what is the setup that would facilitate that outcome for Tim?
God.
Sorry, I had to mention it.
Why did you?
Well, okay, that's the trick. How the money travels from the streaming service to the artist. In fact, I'll go to John with that, and Tim can have a think about it.
You took pity on me.
Yeah. Well, we say in here there is, and some other people said, you've said there's money in streaming. To be honest, the next question is, but what's the deal? It takes it away again. So, you're getting artists who are making a lot of money through streaming if they are releasing themselves and can market themselves and can use digital aggregators who might give you 100% of the money, and they're doing really, really nicely. Thank you very much.
Even from YouTube.
Sorry?
Even from YouTube.
Well, they're not getting as much from YouTube, are they? But we know that.
They're still getting the big chunk.
But if you monitor, The third part of this I've suggested, this is part 2, is YouTube, the economy. How does it bloody work? Because I don't think people, no one knows hardly. It's a massive thing about how you work with that. And it's something that needs to be explored and educated. People need to be educated about it. People are making very large amounts of money from all sorts of streaming services, including YouTube. You just said it, didn't you? You know, if you're in control of it and if you know what to do.
I think we could say Tim hinted. He didn't outright say.
No, he didn't. He said yes.
But Tim, just about this, because IE looks after all levels of artists. You know, are you confident that streaming is going to offer security and control and a decent income for emerging artists, catalogue artists, heritage artists that have a small fan base, all levels of artists, or is it just going to be that top tier?
Well, I think there's no stopping the technology, that's for sure. And while I love vinyl, and there is a market for vinyl, and we certainly sell vinyl, for a mass market, we have to look at where the fans are going, and the fans are embracing streaming. And that's all sorts of fans. That's everything from heavy metal fans to, you know, bubblegum to whatever. And so we have to be there. And I think that I just stand by what I said. I think almost at the beginning. Where I said what digital has taken away, what digital technology has taken away, that technology will put back. It certainly has helped. In terms of how we're accounted to, the record companies are getting way more accurate, publishers are getting way more accurate in how we're being accounted to, with a notable exception. That's the biggest elephant in the room. But I think that...
Sorry, can you pinpoint that? For those of us
actually, I'm not sure that there's any representative here of that company, but... I really do think that digital technology, but it requires a great effort. I mean, this is a really good start. I think we need to be discussing it. I think that there's lots of people who are trying to keep more than they should, if you like. But we have to make a much more equitable. What's the word I'm looking for?
Share of income?
Share of income. Thank you. Well, that was more than one word.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But we just have to make things. We have to make things fairer. We have to make things more equitable, and that requires a lot of honesty, actually, and there's not much of that in certain quarters at the moment.
I reckon we've got time for one, possibly two questions, if there are any. Scaredy cats. Yes, we've got one.
Isn't the issue of streaming not that it's burgeoning popularity and problem with ubiquity? It's that all the majors own huge chunks of Spotify. They take massive advances from them, and Apple. They don't share them. 19 took, was it Sony to court over this recently, and the judge ruled that Sony were under no obligation to share those advances with any of the artists. So it's unlikely that the royalty rates are going to improve. So
I'm very aware of my political situation, and so John, can you fill us in on that case and also what it might mean for what the gentleman?
Well, I haven't studied that case, but I mean, the majors have all said that they are going to share equity if people float, like Spotify is expected to next
Although
year.
Universal haven't said it publicly, I should say.
No, that's true.
Just told everyone behind the scenes.
But then the question is, how? How are they going to share it? So that's the thing, because they've all, I believe, said they're going to share breakage, the difference between the advances and what they earn. And the question to that is, how? And we've been asking them those questions. You know, and then I don't know if you had the Sony thing yesterday where they said, oh, we've been doing this since 2004. And it's like, really? Okay, well, it's good, great that you have, but and they showed us a royalty statement with it on. And that's all about education again. I don't think their equity stakes are that big in Spotify anymore because there's been so many extra fundraising and they haven't participated in that. They've let their stakes get smaller and smaller. But they're still going to be worth probably substantial amounts of money. But it's all about sharing the pie equitably, and it's different from the way it's being shared at the moment. I mean, one of the biggest issues is what's the difference between master rights and songwriters, which at the moment is something like 5-1. Is that right? And I think most people don't think it is. But the question is, how is it going to move? What's going to make it move? Is anything going to make it move? But the biggest issue at the back of it all is the transparency of it. We just don't know. And NDAs are the biggest curse. We've been saying it for years and we continue to say it. They're the biggest curse of the industry. People should be able to see, artists should be able to see how they earn from point of consumption all the way. And that's the end of it.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's... If we're talking about the glorious future of artists and artist management, I don't think we can do much better than that. If anyone else has any other questions, if not, yes, we have one. I think Tom's hand shot up first. I'm sorry.
I'll try and make this quick. I did an MA in music management and I tried to be an artist manager for a while and we got a deal and there wasn't enough money. So, but I was expected as a manager to know everything about the genre, everything about the digital services, everything interpersonal stuff with the artist and how they were getting on, the psychology of all that. And it just strikes me that there's way too much to know and to do, and there's far too little money for managers of, I guess, the second tier of the pyramid. So you've got the bottom of the pyramid, everyone's doing passion, there's no money. And then the next tier up, it just seems like there were so few incentives. I might have just been a shit manager. and not very hard working. Potentially true, but it struck me all the other managers at that stage, there weren't many, to be fair. There's so little incentive, because if I was going to spend all week studying this stuff, but no one was going to give me money for that, there was so little money coming through from what we were earning as an artist. So how do you fix that problem? Will that problem only get worse in the near future?
A good person to answer that's possibly David, because you've seen it from the ground up.
An MA in music management, that's something that wasn't out there for me when I started, that's for sure. You just have to be a nature of person that is what you want to do. I've been on my arse many a time over the years, definitely with management, and I've had to earn money in other areas around the music business. You know, I've worked for a label, I've been a promoter, I've tour managed, a lot over the years. I've done all sorts of things. Just to survive and to keep on doing that management job. And slowly over the years, I've learnt more and more and become better at it. And thankfully now I've found a way that it is a very workable, livable career for me.
We have one very quick question from here.
It takes a special species.
I'm sorry, Martin gets Martin always gets the wild card. Martin.
I'm just wondering what management's changed massively over the last 20 years. The job that and being an artist has changed massively over the last 20 years. And this panel's on the future of management. What is it going to look like in 10 years' time? For an artist, are you going to have to do virtual reality before you make your toast in the morning? More to the point,
is virtual reality going to be your artist?
Have to be whether they
Let's just
want
check
to or
it is
not.
him, Just a minute.
Will managers, whether they want to or not, have to become the record company? How is it really going to change? What's it going to look like in 10 years?
What Martin has gifted me there is what's called a wrap-up question. So I will say briefly, starting with Tim and moving through the panel, what is the future, the true future of artist management going to look like? How are things going to change? What responsibilities are going to be on your shoulders?
Well, hopefully fans are still going to like music, and there's a kind of a moot point there because, the way they're flooding off to doing all sorts of other things, and the reported shortness of attention span nowadays one hopes that they're still going to like music. I've been involved with music since '65, and the one thing that is as true now as it was then is the quality of music. And great artists will come through. And they will need management, most of them, not all, but most of them will need management, will need people there to help organize while they do what they're best at, which is creating.
John?
My favourite quote is from Cern Canning, who manages Franz Ferdinand, and just after I joined the MMF nearly 10 years ago, he was on a panel and said, I used to have to know 5 things as a manager. I now need to know 50 things. I think it's 150 things now in that 10 years. We went to America last week talking about this, and there was a manager for a big network called Network, and he said, I have got a person in my office now, and all they do is data, and I employ someone like that. And I think that as we teach on our induction day, if you can't do everything yourself, you have to do the cost-benefit thing of saying, if I want to do it, can I afford to pay them? And at the beginning, Tom, you can't, unfortunately, because there isn't. You have to do it all yourself, and you have to make judgments about what you are going to do and what you're not going to do. I mean, and it is really, really tough, because we get people all the time coming to us and say, oh, I'm quite successful as a manager, I want to join a management company. And I go, so you're not earning enough money and you want them to pay you more than you're earning, is that right? And they go, yeah. And they go, well, just think about that for a minute and then call me back.
Rob, I suppose the fair question would be not only the future of management, but also the future of management and their relationship with their artist label.
Yeah, it's a tough one, really. Obviously, we want the manager to keep the artist engaged and happy. They're kind of like the bridge between the label and the artist. You know, it can be difficult dealing with an artist directly. You know, we do it quite a lot.
Not this one, not this one.
Absolutely not, obviously. But I think for us, it's a manager who can tie all the bits together and involve the label as being part of the ecosystem of the manager. There's still some adversarial managers out there, and it's really hard work working with those people. They don't do anyone any favours at all. So to me, yeah, I think the future of management is just like managers chilling the fuck out a little bit and just sort of working with us as friends, not as enemies.
Lamar, future of artists.
Yeah.
What are they going to be doing in 10 years?
Honestly, as much as things have changed, I see myself as I'm a natural born hustler. Right, I hustle for my art. I love creating. I love writing. I love being an artist and that whole creative thing. And I think every hustler needs a partner in crime, and that is your manager. That is, you know, the label. Should they join at whatever point, you know? And I think no matter what changes, it's still the same thing. It's still a hustle, you know. If you're on your couch and you're writing a song and then you're thinking, right, how do I now get it to the next stage? You've got to figure it out. You know, there isn't like a manuscript. You have to figure it out. If you can find someone who says, oh, I like what you're doing, we've got to figure this out. The landscape is always changing. You still have to hustle. So I don't think the hustle changes. I just think you look and you find opportunities and you dampen your pride a bit and say, all right, I've got to do that now, or I've got to do that. Don't let the ego get out of control and just hustle. So I'm not sure it is that different.
Martha.
Yeah, I definitely feel like even in the last 2 years, we're wearing so many hats and we're doing so much more. And I really hope and believe that, you know, we will get a bit more power as managers and artists, like when streaming maybe becomes a bit more healthy and artists have a bit more power, and it won't be as tough as it is. But yeah, I think, just like you were all saying, it's still going to be the same qualities, and, you know, people are always going to want to consume music, and you always need to have the same qualities. You always need to be really creative, proactive. The industry is going to probably change so much in the next few years, and you just need to change with it and always think of ideas for how to make money in different areas and just move with it and stay ahead of the game, really.
Always starts with good music.
Always starts with good music. Lamar just said there, you missed that. David, you've probably seen the coalface of the evolution of management closer than most.
To a degree, yeah.
How do you
But
expect?
you know, as Lamar just said, it always starts with the music, and it always starts with the talent and the artist, and without that, there is no business. And that needs to be remembered. You know, we do get sidetracked a little bit too much by tech companies, this how financing and funding and all the rest of it. Sometimes people, some managers actually forget about just like, let your artist make some great music and get that right first, and then you have something to work with. The power is definitely shifting towards the artist, which is the place it should be. It's their art, it's their content. And a byproduct of that is it does give us as managers a little bit more power, because we are doing that. We are hustling. We are the business hustler with the artist hustling, doing the creative. So we're there to grow that business, really. And the place we're at now and the place we're going to be in 10 years is there's so many ways to do that business and so many more opportunities to reach people. Spending, you know, £100 or £500,000, you can still reach people now, and you can still make your product available to whatever fan base, whether that's you know, on a big TV show, or whether that's just being kids in school and starting a band. You know, those kids in school could go out and buy your record you know, go and listen to your record on a streaming service. So that access is fantastic. I don't know, I'm still learning. You know, it grows all the time. And the one thing that will keep me in the business is if I carry on learning.
Well said. With that, I'll say thank you to everyone for listening and being active participants. And also thank you to our brilliant panel. That's David, Martha, Lamar, Rob, John and Tim. Thank you.
Nothing like that.